There it is. Okay, we are live. What are we talking about?
Firearms
Okay.
in America.
All right.
So, um, one point that I didn't see you cover, um, and I'd like to talk about first, is we're in America, and so
Mhm.
we have our own perspective on firearms, which stems from our Constitution, which goes roughly we hold these truths to be self evident that all humans were created equal and endowed at conception with certain inalienable rights. Oh, crap.
You're good. No worries. I do that all the time.
1 second.
The eye on your wall is staring at me.
Yes, that is by Luna Lyric on Twitch.
Hmm.
She hand painted that on stream, and I purchased it from her. This is a original art from Jackson Square artist, and so is this up here. Oh,
Awesome. Yeah, don't drop it. Uh
uh-oh.
oh.
You're coming down for now. I'll deal with you later.
All
But
right. So you got the preamble.
yeah. So the preamble, and created and endowed with certain inalienable rights, among these, but not limited to, are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which extends to self-defense and its extensions of self-defense.
Hmm.
So I like to give this analogy to explain my position. If you're in the woods and or a human, any human, is in the woods and they see a bear that has pulled a salmon or trout or catfish or any other fish out of the river and is feeding it to their two small cubs. And they, take pictures of it or they attempt to harm it in any way. And that bear determines that the human's actions are threatening and mauls that human being. The bear didn't do anything wrong because she's protecting either herself, her cubs, her food, or her territory. Um, and so those are all extensions of self defense. She's defending either herself or her fresh kill or her kids or whatever her reasoning is. That's what she's defending.
Hmm.
And those are extensions of self defense. And she has that right and ability given to her by nature and nature's God, whatever that may be.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it's not specific to any particular religion because it's universal across the globe. Everybody can recognize that.
Hmm.
Um,
Just to clarify, are you using that just as an analogy, or are do you have thoughts on that? A government should protect that bear's right to protect itself.
um, I think that a government cannot, just like you cannot write anything on a piece of paper that takes away that bear's right to do so,
Hmm.
neither can any government.
Well, what I mean is, so if that bear is protecting its family, which I agree with you, if I was the person there and I had a gun, I would shoot that bear, even though it's protecting its family. Where when it comes to humans, if you threaten somebody and then they go to fight back with you, if you kill them, the human that killed is going to be in trouble in that case. But with the bear, should we say that that bear had the right to defend its cubs, and since you shot the bear that had its right, you actually are in trouble?
If you shoot a bear that's protecting its cubs, un, you are the one that did something wrong, but you are not going to be prosecuted for it
Mm.
because we do not legally recognize a bear's rights to supersede human rights.
Yeah. Well,
But
and
we
also,
do
also,
recognize. we do recognize that they have those rights. So if a tourist is in Yellowstone and is taking photos of a bear and gets mauled, we don't
Mhm.
say the bear did anything wrong. We say the tourist
Mm.
did something wrong.
Yeah. Would the bear not be put down, similar to like a dog attack, if it's
Um,
from nature?
typically, they
Okay.
will try and find it and see. They will do a behavioral assessment,
Okay.
and if they find that the tourist wasn't overly aggressive with it or overly provoking of it,
Mm-hmm.
then they might destroy the animal. If they find that the tourist basically begged for it by provoking the bear egregiously, they
Mm.
might let the bear live because the bear's going to do what the bear's going to do.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
I figure in nature, provoked or not, you could just let it, let it be. It makes sense with a dog that if it's likely to do it again, you have to put it down. But yeah, not with an animal in nature. One quick point I do want to make though, not that it's the bear's fault for not having the ability to reason, but if you happen upon a bear and the bear just detects a threat, even if you're not trying to be a threat, and it might try to defend its cubs just because there are cubs there. A difference that there would be with humans is if there's a human and some their human kids, and then a human approaches them. Even if they detect a threat, the humans could reason with each other, and the person would be like, "Oh, I'm just walking past." And so, I don't know. The bear's actions obviously are justified in the sense that an animal, an unreasonable animal's actions can't be thought as not justified. I don't know why I'm making this point, but I did. So,
yeah, well, there is an inherent. I just want to point out the inherent right to self defense, and that
mhm.
it extends to progeny, property, the product of your labor, and wait, your person.
Okay.
It's your person, your progeny, your children, your property, your territory, the bear's territory, what the bear
Mhm.
perceives to be its territory, which might be whatever's within sight.
Mhm.
And then it's the product of its labor, the fish or whatever its food is, and so forth. Anything that it sees as is, whether that be a den or its favorite tree to scratch on, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and likewise, human beings have that same right to defend themselves, their home, their children, their wife, and the product of their labor, be it
Mhm.
their vehicle or their house itself, which is kind of double covered, you know,
Mhm.
um, or just not wanting to give up their shoes because they're the latest and greatest shoes on the planet or whatever,
Mhm.
you know. Um,
I want to point out, just in case it makes you want to go a different route with talking about this. I personally don't believe in natural rights. The mindset that would lead to viewing something as a natural right would be the same mindset that I would have to want the government of my society to grant people rights, in a constitution. But I don't. I mean, we can do whatever we want to do. Where nature doesn't care if it kills somebody because they're defending their cubs, or if they kill somebody just for pure fun. I might think something's morally wrong, but anyways, I wanted to
right.
point that out. That I agree with everything you're saying as far as what we should lay out
Well,
by
I come
law.
from the perspective of natural rights that are
Okay.
neither granted by the government nor can be stripped away by the government, because there's nothing anybody can write on a piece of paper that is going to strip a bear of its right to self defense and the extension of that self defense to its immediate care.
Hmm.
And likewise, there's no law that should be um, put on the books to limit a human being's right to do the same. Now,
Yeah,
it's
I
up to
mostly
the
agree.
turn to decide whether or not they acted in self defense. And
Hmm.
if
Just how real quick, how would you describe how this right exists. So like if just similar to how animals, most animals haven't created anything that looks like a civilized society like we have. So let's imagine that us humans, me and you, we're just born to some wild humans and we're just out in nature. I'm a psychopath and I just get joy in killing. I'm not for eating, not for protecting, and I just want to come kill you. Somebody can witness that and call it immoral. They can say, "Oh, he has no right." You can say these words, but I don't think any of it means anything other than individuals could have opinions based on the desires of the one that got taken out. Um, like nature doesn't care if the river swallows us up.
Yeah. So if I'm walking down the street and somebody says, "You stole my spoons and put them on the moon," and comes at me with a hammer, I have every right to execute that person in self defense. And then the legal process is that I will go in front of a court magistrate. Hopefully, there's some sort of video from one of the nearby areas that captured it and shows they made this action against me first,
Mm-hmm.
and that I reacted with lethal force because I was threatened with lethal force.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perfectly reasonable every time. But there comes a lot of gray areas that humans get themselves in because we do have minutia that exists. But in broad strokes, you know, you do have that right to self defense. And I think that extends even to abortion because there are instances wherein a fetus is as lethal of a threat to a mother that it's within as the crazy guy with a hammer saying, "You stole my spoons and put them on the moon. I'm going to kill you." Well,
Mm-hmm.
a fetus, for various medical reasons, can be that same level of lethal threat to a mother. And therefore, she should be allowed an abortion on the premise of self defense. Everybody agrees with that. There's like 97% support for in the life of the mother abortions across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reasoning behind it. It is self defense in that situation. And the mother has every right to self defense.
Yeah, I will. Can I challenge that?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so if there's a car wreck, a few car pile up, and all these people show up to the hospital. There's a guy covered in swastika tattoos, and he's close to dying. And then there's somebody else that they need some stitches, no swastika tattoos, maybe some butterflies. Would we agree that the what we think is best and what it happens to be what actually happens, but me and you both think what's best is you still help the person that's in the most harm, whether we deem them as a bad person.
You triage despite tattoos.
Yeah. So same thing with like if there's a fire. Now you might go for the most. You might not go for the closest person if they're more able-bodied, but if all things equalized, you go into a building that's burning, you save the nearest person.
Typically, or
Okay.
possibly, it depends on the situation, but I can see two veins of thought.
Okay.
The first person you come to is the closest to escaping themselves.
Good call.
So possibly it would behoove that firefighter or civilian acting as a firefighter to go deeper and find somebody who is incapacitated or um, less capable of escaping themselves in some way.
Okay, so let's say you go into the building. 10 feet in is a person. 15 feet past them, 10 feet past them is another person. In both cases, neither person can get out on their own.
Okay. I would make the case when presented with that in this arbitrary, I would go against and get the 20 person first in the hopes
Mm.
that once I got them out, I could make the second quick trip before the fire consumed the second person.
Okay. What if the
Whereas if I had to go and make a second trip for that person that's 20 feet away, the time I used getting the 10-foot person away might prevent me from being able to get to that person.
Yeah. No, you're completely right. That's an excellent thought, and I think you're right. Okay. Does it matter if, let's say, you have a 30-year-old is one of them, and the other one is a 1 day old baby? And you can flip either side that they're at. But both of them, the 30-year-old is maybe a paraplegic with no upper body strength, and then the 1 day old doesn't matter. You can look at them however you want.
But if it, I'm looking at them as productive members of society in this case.
Okay.
And because the 1 day old can grow up and do a full 42 years of honest labor,
Okay.
and presumably, do the full 42 years of work, I would probably save the 1 year old out of the
One day
greater-
old.
the 1 day old.
But either way, yeah.
Yeah, tiny year old of any
The
size.
tiny year old. Yeah.
I mean, even if it was a 5-year-old, it doesn't change the math on me.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I just wanted to bring this idea into play because everybody says when the mother's life's at risk, you save the mother, and I don't disagree. But that's an emotional stance that I care more. I've done a ranking of ages.
Here's the way I look at it from a strict numbers perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The mother can always get pregnant again and yield more offspring at a later date, and continue to work and be a productive member of society in the meantime, and possibly all the way until her retirement, whenever that may be. Whereas if we try to force her to have that child and there's, say, an 85% chance she dies, if she dies before, 26 weeks now, I think is the cutoff date where we can save the child. If she dies before that child reaches 26 weeks, we lose both her and all her future productivity and the baby and any of its future productivity. So there's no gain in trying to force her to have a child when she's most likely, 51% for me, to die from trying to do that.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, and we can break down different reasons. This is why I wanted to bring up the example of the swastika tattooed guy and various different things. Like if we can each decide. We think this, if we look at enough information, this person's more valuable than this. Gotcha. This person's more valuable than this other person. And so one thing that I think is interesting with the mother and the fetus is, and the reason I brought up the 1 day old thing, and I'm imagining this 1 day old that's in the fire was born like a month early or something. So it's 1 day old as far as breathing, but as far as how long it's cooked inside its mom, we'll call it like a 8-month gestation. If you ignore these ideas of is this person letting this thing be a parasite on it or whatever, if you just take this fetus that can live outside of the woman on its own, you take the woman, you have these two humans that exist. Now the location, you can argue changes things if you want, but if you just take these two things and separate them and you say, here's two humans, one thing leading to another is going to make one of them die. The idea that we just instantly go to save this certain one based on age. I feel like sure,
Well,
if we see that this baby about to be born is like holding a knife up to its mother, but
well,
it comes down to, is it self defense? Because what is the action taking place?
yeah. Um, that's why I believe, and every state is debating this right now for themselves. But the way I see it is, I don't really care about either the mother or the child as much as I do about the overall productivity moving out into the future.
Mm-hmm.
So the baby represents 42 years of potential labor and taxation on that labor to the state. And so um, I think that in cases where it's not clear that the mother is going to die, there are some preeclampsia, and I forget all of the situations, but there's
Mm-hmm.
medical situations. I'm a dude. I just know they exist. Um, where it's a greater than 51% universally accepted and researched, and data going back to the 1600s proving this set of circumstances, you know, 82% of them die, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
In those situations, I have absolutely no problem with those abortions. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
I
it's
got you on that, but hold on. Let me pause you real quick. Just because you said you would, in the fire, you'd rather save the 1 day old baby who is 8 month gestation but born early. You'd rather save that baby than the 30-year-old human that's in there, because of their long life to live and their productivity and whatnot.
yeah. Well, you
So how
also
does that change if that 1 day old baby is just inside of its mother and it's the exact same situation? One of them is going to
you
die.
save
You
the
can save
pregnant
one.
woman. You save the pregnant woman instead of the guy that is a paraplegic, because the example you gave me, the guy was a
Hmm.
paraplegic.
Oh, well, it wasn't a guy. It was a woman, and she was pregnant. Well, she wasn't pregnant, but she's pregnant now. It's the same
Oh,
person.
oh, you were trying to say one was the mother. Well, the way
Hmm?
I envision it is the father is a paraplegic and has to be carted around on a wheelchair, and he's fallen out of his wheelchair, and so it's
Hmm.
not an easy get.
Yeah.
And then there's the mother who is pregnant, um, and
What?
whether she's obviously pregnant, but let's say she's only 4 months pregnant, but she's obviously pregnant.
Hmm.
You can tell there's the baby bump, and she's wearing a T-shirt that says "baby boy" or something on it.
Hmm.
Um, you save the pregnant woman.
Yeah. No,
Um,
no, no. I'm saying, so you have a 30-year-old or 25-year-old woman that's a paraplegic,
mhm.
and you have this baby. And were you stating only save the baby because you thought it was a male paraplegic?
I just, when not given gender, I
Hmm.
assume male because I am
Okay.
male.
That's fine. Is
Like,
that's fine. Is the paraplegic part of why you say, what if it's unconscious but will be perfectly fine if they weren't unconscious? 25-year-old, gender doesn't matter, and then you have this baby.
it's a 25-year-old volleyball player and a pregnant woman.
Well, no pregnant woman. You have a 1 day old baby, and
Okay.
then you have a person that can't get themselves out, but either can be saved and either will live great, perfect lives, but you can only save one. Now, before, when it was a paraplegic, random gendered, whatever, you save the baby. Is the changing the paraplegic and they're just unconscious, but they'll come to and be great and be productive in society? Do you now prioritize them over the baby?
No, I still prioritize the baby.
Okay, so now let's set that all aside. We have pregnant woman. She's a day away from giving birth, but it's not going to happen. That baby, you can either take that baby out and the mother will die and the baby will live on to have a great life, or you kill the baby and the mother will live on to have a great life. What changes for you in that situation versus the fire?
Um, Return on investment, basically. So if the state or the hospital invests the resources to save the child, and the child grows up to do the full 42 years of taxpayerness. Is that a better return on investment, the cost of incubating the child and everything else, than allowing the child to die and returning the mother back to full health so that she can go back to work in 6 weeks or whatever?
Well, let me clarify before you continue, because I think you're making good points. The baby that's saved in the fire, its mother died in the fire. So that baby that's 1 day old, the babies are the same, and they'll be raised whoever they're raised by. Whether we want to have both scenarios be raised by the government or both of them have a father and a bunch of grandparents and everybody's taking care of this baby. This baby is well loved. The question is, does it change that it's a fire with a mother and an already born baby that you save the baby? But if it's the mother and the not born baby, but the baby's the exact same age, it's the same gestation age. That's the question.
I got confused there. But can you restate that question? Because I kind of lost track.
Yeah, you're fine. Okay, so in the scenario in the fire, you have a 25-year-old unconscious mother of a baby that was just born. 1 day, the baby was born a month early, so it's 8 months gestation, but born. And that baby's there, the mother's there, and you say you want to save the baby, and in this scenario, the baby has a father and a bunch of grandparents, and the baby's going to be raised well. The government doesn't have to raise the baby. Okay, and then the other scenario, you have the mother, 8 months gestation baby inside of her, so this one wasn't born yet, but obviously can live just as fine as that other 8-month gestation baby, and you can save one of them, the mother or the baby. And if you save the baby, it has a father and grandparents, and the government doesn't have to take care of anything. That baby's going to live its full life and taxation, all the stuff. So you're explaining to me why you would save the baby in the fire, but the mom in the hospital room.
Well, if the situation was, it depends on the situation slightly, because if saving the baby is 100% and the mother dying is, say, 51%, as a result of the C-section, she might lose too much blood, heart rate, whatever, some sort of something, pregnancy diabetes or something has caused her to go into a coma, whatever. If taking the baby out and getting her stabilized in some way is an option, I think that 2 paralegals in the hospital should argue, one for the baby's case in that situation and one for the mother's case in that situation, with an odd number of doctors sitting on a panel, and both of them are trying to argue for their prospective clients. And that should be internal to the hospitals and away from government legislation. The doctors have a Hippocratic oath to do no harm and to maximize societal good. And they should be trusted to make a good judgment, but both the child and the mother should have advocates behind closed doors to make the arguments. And then 20 years later, you declassify all that and release it. And these are the abortions we did. These were the arguments that were done by the paralegals for and against. And this was the decision of the doctors that sat on the, council or whatever, the arbiters. And that's how the decision was made. And I think that alleviates all of the debate, because it gets it out of left-wing, right-wing debates and puts it into doctors that have a whole lot more information about the nuances of a specific case than we do trying to create hypotheticals.
Yeah. No, I think you make good points, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. But just real quick, so I can have an idea of what you think. Let's say it's 100% either way. It's not a 51 that the mom might live if they take the baby out. Only one will live. The other will die. Everything's identical. what makes you choose the mom if you choose the mom? You, if they come to you and say, we're letting you choose, nobody else chooses. And in the fire, when they came to you, you said, save that baby. Here's my reasons. Now they come to you and they say, only one will live. It's 100% that one will live. 100% the other one will die. Do you choose the mother? And why do you choose the mother in this case?
Well, in that case, I probably would choose
Okay.
the baby, because of uh, higher future potential.
Okay.
Um,
It's funny because I'm arguing it and I don't even know if I agree with that sense. Like I think you saved the mother, but I don't have a good reason that's not emotional. But I think either one has a good argument, and I think you made very good points. It's something that I just don't think a lot of people think about. Everybody, even pro-life people, which I'm mostly pro-life, most pro-life people will say, I'm against abortion except in case of the mother's life's at risk. Because it seems kind of absurd to say if this mother's going to die, we save the baby. But then one day I just stopped and thought about it, and I'm like, if you have an adult and a baby here, and you're choosing which one's more valuable, it's really
well,
hard to make this choice. But for some reason, people think it's easy if you put the baby inside the mother, and it's
yeah,
just location difference.
life is a lot more complicated than that,
Yeah.
and there is the inescapable fact that any mother can always get either a C-section and told the baby is dead, or an abortion by simply going to the hospital and saying, if you do not get rid of this baby, I will commit suicide. They'll put her on a
Interesting.
72-hour watch, and then they'll be like, well, we're going to release you. If you release me without taking this baby out, I'm going to commit suicide. And
Hmm.
then the doctors are in a position where they either have to knock her out and do a C-section, and tell her the baby was dead and put it up for adoption, or they have to perform an abortion because the child is not gestated appropriately to survive outside of the mother,
Yeah.
whichever is the case.
They could put her in a very well furnished prison. Um, just because the threat to commit suicide while the baby's in you could be perceived as a threat to kill another human. And I say well furnished because I wouldn't want her to just go in a small
Well,
cement
psych
cell.
ward until, but do you commit that woman to a psych ward for 120 days until the child is gestated enough to survive outside of her?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Would you commit that woman for 120 days to
Mm.
a psychiatric ward till the child was able to gestate enough to survive outside of her?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what the exact number is, but yeah, like
In this case, she's 120 days away
yeah.
from whatever it is. I think it's 26 weeks right now. Anything past 26 weeks has over a 99% survival rate.
Yeah, and the longer you stay in, the longer the gestation, the healthier you are to be. So if somebody can survive at 26 weeks, but they would be not having to go in the NICU and have health issues if they stayed in for the 40 weeks, then I don't know where the cutoff is. I think at some point, if a woman was like 30 weeks or 35 weeks pregnant and said, I don't care if it's less healthy for the baby to come out now. I want it out now. I don't think you should be able to do an abortion that involves killing the baby at that point, but removing it at that point is fine. But I like a C-section. But I feel like maybe 26 weeks, even though it's viable, I think maybe she should be forced to let that baby gestate a little longer with
So
the
you
psych
would
ward.
commit her for 30 days, reassess
Um,
her psychiatrically at that point,
yeah, maybe
see if,
something like that. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then see if, that's 4 weeks. So that takes her from 26 to 30. That takes her from needing, that takes the baby from needing 4 weeks of NICU, which costs something like $3,000 a day.
Hmm.
Whereas housing her for 4 weeks is like $128 a day, just to
Yeah.
feed her and the staffing.
Well, and
Uh,
I view most abortion conversation in a what's the word neglect a sense. Like I don't really I pretty much only view it as neglect where this human's here and we are responsible for them. Like so a parent's responsible for their children unless they legally take the approaches to get it to a place for adoption or whatever. And so if we is similar to if somebody thought their rights to bodily autonomy could make it to where they can go in and like amputate their baby's arm or something because it's in their body, it's part of them, it's just that whole idea of it's not its own thing yet. Anything that can happen that can be a downside for that human, I think is worth looking at almost for the future. So I don't think, in the same sense that I don't think somebody should be able to starve their baby at home, I don't think that they should be able to have their baby C-sectioned from them when the healthiest thing for that baby is to keep cooking in the mom.
I can see that argument, but you know, the there I do see that as a loophole wherein the vast majority of cases before 16 weeks or so, when it's unquestionable that we're going to have to house you for 2 months before we can even house this child in a NICU unit,
Mm.
um, that they are going to have the ability to get an abortion even in a state that would otherwise prohibit it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Because
I was going to say
that
one way I like to look at this kind of thing is because a lot of people their go-tos on any of these kind of arguments will be about what our capabilities are, like how bad foster care is, and not being able to afford to raise a child. So I think to figure out what we would find ideal in an ideal society, and then also separately what we would find most moral, is we need to look at this in a hypothetical where we have all the resources in the world. Would it be immoral to do a certain action if we had all the funds, all the money, all the resources, all the food, all the stuff? And then we can say, okay, in this case, here's where it would be moral, here's where it would be immoral. And then once we figure out, okay, we actually have the right answer, then we can say, okay, now in our real world, this is what our country's capable of doing. And
yeah,
then answer that. Because if I was on an island with 100 babies and I magically knew I could only feed 15 of them and keep 15 alive, and if I tried to feed all of them, we're all going to suffer and die, and I had magic pills that would instantly kill a baby, I would put 85 of those pills in 85 of those babies and take them out quick because my area, my island I'm on, I don't have the capability. So even though in the U.S. right now today I'm pretty pro-life, in certain situations I'd even be pro-choice up until after birth. So
on your island with 85 death pills, would you be willing to only use 80 of them and keep 20 alive in the hopes that even though they'll be a little less nourished, they'll be very likely to survive all 20 of them? And then you'll have a greater workforce for the next generation after that.
that's a great question. I've talked about this island thing during many abortion debates, and I never got that question pushed back on me. That's a really good question. I don't know if I would base it so much on the workforce, which maybe I should, and I just haven't thought it through. But I think it's also a good question just for the sake of what level of healthiness and level of surviving and thriving would make it worth having another human's existence. I probably no. I wouldn't need the most maximum health possible, but I'd want something close to it. So I'd probably just do the 15. But it's complicated. If I knew a handful of different things, it might bump it to 16 or whatever. I just, I I guess it's just the idea that there are cases where this would need to be done. So back in the day, I'm sure there's many cases where somebody had like a mentally challenged child they gave birth to, and having to climb trees to get away from predators and go on like treks across mountains to survive in different type settings. If they have to quickly smother some child that's going to be a burden. It's a bummer, but you kind of just have to accept it. Whereas if we have, with innovation and resources and we have a flourishing society, we can say, oh, okay, no, we're going to have a place that we take care of mentally challenged people. And
Yeah. So on that note, since we somehow became talking about abortion instead,
yeah.
um, um, a quick question about Down syndrome being a virtual automatic abortion in so many states. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I don't know enough about it to have a strong stance on it. Um, my buddy Jeremy here in the chat's probably wishing he was here because he wanting to talk here because he has a lot of strong stances on selecting for certain genetics and whatnot. I at this point I would say that I am not in favor of aborting anyone that can live a healthy and happy life. And so in our situation, even somebody that can't take care of themselves will always be taken care of by the system, which might be the case of Down syndrome. I say don't abort. But if there was a situation where I was not being lied to and experts were saying, oh, what we can see in this ultrasound is that this baby's going to be born and within 48 hours, it's just going to have the most suffering possible and then die because it's missing most of its brain and it has this certain whatever. Then I would say, yeah, like I don't want to cause suffering. We can remove this thing, but based on like intelligence level because of special needs, I don't think so unless I knew more about it.
Okay. It's one of those interesting things. Anyways, guns are great.
Yeah, I
Everybody should
actually,
have a gun. I do want to wrap this up with guns, though, because
yeah.
that's the original intent. We just abortion is an interesting topic.
hmm
Um,
We were talking about defense that was going to lead into guns,
yes,
and you made a comment about abortion and defense, and so I
yeah.
really liked that conversation. I think we branched off in a good way. I can do about another 15 minutes, so yeah, let's get some gun talk in here, and then we'll set up a second
So,
talk.
so the reason why I say that is, um, you know, oh, I lost it. I lost it because we were talking about abortion so much.
Yeah. So gun, just self defense, the
Oh,
natural right.
yeah, you have your natural rights to self-defense, but in America we have one step beyond that, which is our citizen's arrest, which is every citizen has the duty of a peacekeeper when in public. Every
Mm.
citizen that has full voting rights. That's what the suffering part of full citizenship is. That's why it's women's suffrage. That's the suffering part, is you suffer the burden of being a peacekeeper and you suffer the burden of having to research and vote on things appropriately, and so on and so forth when you're in public. And that's why when you leave your house, you should be armed so that you can carry out your duty as a peacekeeper should a situation present itself where you have to act in the greater good and defend yourself with lethal force or somebody else who is being victimized with lethal force.
Mm.
Um, and so that's why I think there should be more gun ownership throughout the world, not just in America, because I think it's a natural right, not just here in America. I think it extends to all humans everywhere. If you mass produced 9 billion guns and 27 what is it 2.7 trillion full metal jacket rounds of ammunition and distributed to every human being a 38 revolver pistol and 300 rounds of ammunition so that they could carry it whenever they went out in public and be a force for peace and tranquility and provide for the common defense, then the whole world would get a lot better really quickly.
Mhm.
Now, there would obviously be bad actors for the first 6 months to 4 years, but they will weed themselves out, and the good people, which I believe are the vast majority of people, will survive them and prosper long into the future.
Mhm.
So that's my perspective on guns.
Yeah, no, I think I mostly agree. I think it's complicated, but yeah, I think it's important to. I think people that aren't in favor of guns and the Second Amendment are people that, which is everybody, people that did not grow up in a time where um, they had to flee from kings to start their own countries to be able to set up rights to defend themselves from their own government. And when we have things so good like we have now in a lot of ways, anyways, we're so protected that I think a lot of people just think like, oh, I don't need a gun. I've never needed a gun. I've never came across this situation, and they don't recognize what possibilities exist out in the world. So I do think it's important, but what I would say is it becomes complicated because when the Second Amendment was written, at that time, everything that the government could have, the people could have. So the Second Amendment includes cannons and all kinds of things. It's not just muskets. It's any weapon the government could have, the people could have to defend themselves with a militia from a government uprising. Now, I think it might be slightly different now, though, with our advancements. Like, do you think people should legally have
Nuclear weapons?
grenades or
Absolutely.
nukes? What? No, stop it. The
Yes.
the the ability to some
So let me explain.
wackadoodle. Okay, go for it.
Okay, first off, let's explain this thoroughly because every nuclear weapon costs $3.8 billion.
Fair point.
So only Walmart, Amazon, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and a few others can afford them. Moreover, they cost about $170 million a year to
Hmm.
maintain and stand ready. So
Hmm.
if Walmart, Amazon, um, Nike, I don't know, Disney wanted to maintain those weapons in order to have that level of lethal force behind don't pirate our ships making transatlantic or trans-Pacific flights or voyages, ships, and wanted to negotiate on equal footing as a nuclear power on the international stage when they deal with getting manufacturing done in China or anything else, they should be able to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't know if I fully agree, but you make a good point. So I'll point out for the rest of this talk in case you want to challenge these ideas. I have two stances with guns that kind of maybe go against some gun ownership business. So for one, I think it's important that the government can document who owns which guns. I think it's good to keep track, have serial numbers on guns, and I'm kind of torn on. I lean towards there should be quickly accessible way to track guns for the sake of solving crimes. I know there's some debate about should it stay paper file versus electronic file. I really think the government should be able to step in and go, this crime was committed here. We know it's this gun. Who purchased this gun last, and have a trail. Now, my second thing, which I'm on the fence of, but I lean towards to curb crimes of passion. It'll also curb suicides, but I'm less concerned about suicides and more so crimes of passion. I do think there should be a waiting period of at least 24 hours, but maybe even something closer to like 72. But that being said, if somebody fears for their life, if somebody overhears that somebody else is going to kill them, and they want to go buy a gun that day because they've never owned a gun before and they want to defend themselves, even though I think there should be a waiting period of 24 to 74 hours, something like that, I think in those cases they should be able to go to any police department and say, I'm afraid for my life. My gun won't get to me for 72 hours. Put me up in a really nice, sheltered location.
My counter to the second one that you just described,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody has, well, I disagree with waiting periods, but where they exist, I would love to see a amendment that allows somebody who filed a restraining order to be able to skip the 72, 48, 24-hour waiting period and get a same day gun, um, on the provision that if their um, uh, if their restraining order gets rescinded, that gun gets confiscated for 30 days.
Mm.
Um, whereas because then you're just screwing up with them, you're creating unnecessary paperwork to
Mm.
get a gun sooner. Um, and if you created that paperwork to get the gun sooner and then committed a crime with that gun, I think additional charges for filing false police reports and all of the things that are already on the books should be levied against you as well,
Mm.
because you're abusing that system. But in the case where, you know, tiny woman is being abused and she wants to get herself and her kids away from it, and so she put ex-boyfriend out of the house and he's been evicted, but now he's making, threats, and even if he's not armed, he can kill her. So she wants to have lethal force to defend herself.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And even if it's the other way around, the woman left and now she's making a bunch of threats, and you don't know what type of weaponry she can get a hold of legally or illegally, a guy should be able to say, hey, I kicked this crazy woman out of my house and now I need a gun in case she comes
Yeah.
back and commits some sort of crime.
Yeah. No, I got you. Okay. So I'll preface this next thing I'm going to point out with I don't think that there are certain things that no number of deaths or bad outcomes should change certain freedoms. I don't care how many school shootings there are. There's no number that would make me think that people in general should lose the right to guns.
Yeah.
I think we should have the right to guns no matter what. But there
Also,
is a number. Well, real quick, there is a number that would make me think there should be waiting periods. So if a number was low enough, then maybe the waiting periods don't matter. But I think if my question to you is, what number of people, if we could track this and see how many people use a gun that they purchase within, let's say, 24 or 48 hours of purchasing, using to kill innocent people, not killing somebody in self-defense, but finding somebody, their spouse cheating on them, going and buy a gun, they go and they kill the spouse or they kill the cheater or they kill both. Is there a certain number that if this happened, you would feel comfortable saying we need to retain our rights to bear arms, but a waiting period is fine for 24 or 48 hours?
um, I recognize that those laws exist. I think they shouldn't exist. Um, and um, as far as school shootings go, my position on that is all teachers should have either in a locked drawer in their desk or on their person in a concealed carry fashion, whether it's appendix carry or wearing a suit jacket and having one under their armpit, a firearm, because they are out in public and they are acting as a peacekeeper, because they are out in public as a citizen. they should be carrying a firearm so that if something were to happen, the teacher has the right and responsibility to protect their classroom.
Would you just want that option to exist, or would you want it to be part of what's mandated to be a teacher?
I think the way things are, um, every cashier should be armed. Everybody, every adult from 18 to 75, after that with a competency test,
Mm-hmm.
should be armed when they leave their home.
But not.
Whether they are working in a bank, they are working in a nursing home, they are working at a hospital. I don't care what they're doing. When they leave their house, they should be armed.
No, I'm with you. I think that I see good reason for what you're claiming, but I'm just wanting to make sure that you're just saying that you think this would be for the best outcome. You don't think that should be mandatory. Like if a police officer comes up to you and you aren't armed, that you go to jail because you don't have your arm.
No, it wouldn't be. You could be a conscientious objector and pay a fine equal to 1 hour minimum wage per day
For not having a gun on you?
or not having a gun on you when you're outside your house.
Okay, we're going to save that for a separate talk because it's interesting. I think you're wrong, but I would love to be convinced otherwise. But real quick, I do want to re-ask my question. I get that you don't think there should be a waiting period, but are there a certain amount of deaths that could happen within a 48-hour period of buying guns that would make you change your mind? Let's say in 2024, all of a sudden let's say there are 1 million deaths that specifically that 1 million happened within 48 hours of purchasing a gun. Would you be up for having a 48-hour waiting period until those numbers adjust?
If it was that high, possibly. But if it was 36
No.
or 136, absolutely not.
What if it was 5 times the number that people that use guns within 48 hours to defend themselves? So let's say in one given year, there was 100 people that defended themselves with a gun within 48 hours of purchasing it. But in that same year, there were 500 innocent deaths from people that do crimes of passion that purchased it and shot within 48 hours. Would the ratio matter of seeing how many people? Yeah.
I would apply it's better to let 9 men or 99 men go free that are guilty of a crime than that one innocent person suffer. So I would not be in it unless the suffering was so disproportionate that it was 1,000,000 to 1.
No, I think we strongly, yeah.
In that case, that is incontrovertible. But if we're having 1,000,000 deaths a year from gun violence, that's some sort of civil war situation. And I don't think anything the government says in that situation is going to make any difference because we didn't even surpass 1,000,000 deaths in the 20 years of the Iraq War. Mm-hmm. So, having 1,000,000 deaths domestically over guns in 1 year, I don't think there's anything the government could say about it because that's a level of extermination that is grossly egregious.
Gotcha.
So.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad to hear you make the comment about letting 99 go versus putting one innocent person in jail. Because I find myself pretty alone on that stance, but I do find false convictions to be one of the worst things that can happen. But anyways, and same goes for the gun situation. To remove, if somebody dies because they couldn't purchase a gun within 24 hours to protect themselves and they die by not being allowed to, I consider that a bigger issue than if 100 people were killed because some maniac has a gun. I think we align in that way, and I think that'll be interesting to go over as well. But anyways, it was a great talk. I got to hop off here, but let's set up another one soon.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you officially, and you have a great day.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye bye.